There lived a lady called Abeke, the first child in the Olutoye family, and had earned an average income that sustained the family. They couldn't buy many of the things they wanted, but they weren't hungry. Mrs. Olutoye was a full housewife. She was a fair-skinned, curvaceous woman who lived a carefree life. She hated anything that had to do with stress. All she does is sit on the sofa while she commands her children to do all the chores. Mr. Olutoye had complained about her laziness several times, but she wouldn't budge. She wasn't anywhere close to a helpmeet to her husband, who usually lamented how tedious being the sole provider of the family had been. Abeke had a father who was obsessed with education. He made his daughter start school as early as age 2. Neighbors complained it was too early, as that wasn't the common practice at that time. They insisted he wanted to raise the youngest graduate in his lineage. His wife was so happy with the idea because it accrued onto her many lazy hours. Abeke had always been a bright girl. There was no cause for her to repeat any class, from her childhood down to secondary school. By her dad's calculation, she would finish her secondary school education by age 15. Her father did the calculations with her, and both of them beamed with smile. It was unusual for many girls of that age to be done with secondary school in their locality. Mr. Olutoye had numerous discussions with Abeke on the beauty of education and his plans to ensure he raises children with at least master's degree. Abeke had such line of discussion so much till she had it ingrained in her mind. Daily, she would think of how she would become a professor at age 30 because she planned to start her PhD immediately after her proposed master's program. She would beam with smile at the thought of it. At a time, she told her classmates to call her doctor. She looked forward to it with so much enthusiasm. Then, in her final year in the secondary school, tragedy struck. Her father died. It was a rude shock to the family. Abeke refused to accept the reality, as she would go to her dad's room every night to look for him. Her mother, on the other hand, kept lamenting how she would bear the financial burden of the family. That was the line that kept coming out of her. The extended family of her late husband promised that they would be there for her. After the mourning, Abeke went back to school. She was so withdrawn from the lectures and it began to affect her grades. Soon, she came to the realization that her late father wouldn't like that. He wanted her to pass in flying colors, and she would make sure she granted his wish. She threw herself into reading and covering up all the lost ground. Her friends were of help to her. Afterwards, WAEC was conducted and she sat the exam. Her father had paid for the exam before his demise. The realization of how poor they had become dawned on her. When her mother couldn't pay for her long-anticipated valedictory service, she was sad, but her mother gave her the impression that she was trying to gather money for her tertiary education. Abeke understood and let it go. Another shocker hit her some months later. She realized that whenever she was talking about her tertiary education, her mother was always uninterested. She would ask her if she was fine, and she would reply affirmatively. 3 months after, Mrs. Olutoye broke the sad news to her, which was she would no longer go to school because she couldn't fund it. Abeke was sorrowful. She asked her mother if she had called the extended family, who promised to help. She replied she didn't have airtime. Abeke would remind her many times of the need to call them. She would always come up with excuses. 5 years later, Abeke was working as a receptionist in a supermarket. She always had a stern look on her face. She had been living an angry life since 5 years ago. Most of her mates were done with their tertiary institutions. Some of them had shopped in her madam's supermarket. Some would come in their cars looking so good. At first, Abeke used to be happy for them, but recently, she would get sad over the realization that she ought to be done with school and how her father's absence had taken that away from her. She followed some of her ex-classmates on social media. She found herself crying They enjoyed the goodies that came with being educated. She knew it was wrong for her to be sad over people's achievements, but she couldn't bring herself to be happy with them because it seemed like they were living a dream. One day, a customer turned friend was having a chat with her. She got close to Abeke because she realized she was always looking sad in the supermarket. She maneuvered her way into Abeke's heart and became her friend. Though she wasn't able to get a direct information from Abeke on why she usually looked sad, Abeke loved to keep things to herself. Ellen, her friend, was able to gather from a long time of listening to her. She wanted the life of being an educated person. She would lament how her savings for 5 years wasn't in any way close to what would sustain her through the university. She fed from her income, having moved out of her father's house because her shameless mother kept collecting money from her. Ellie gave her an advice that turned around her life. She advised that since what she said wasn't enough for a university education, she should buy online courses that would fetch her some money, after which she would save from it and be able to go to school. Aweke dismissed it as trash. She had always seen digital course creators as thieves. Ellie talked and talked. When she saw she wouldn't budge, she bought Abeke a graphic design course. Even though Abeke didn't believe in it, she was touched by such kindness. She had never received such kindness since her father died. In appreciation, she took the courses seriously and practiced. To her surprise, she loved it. She loved how graphic design gave her creative powers. She began to practice new designs every day. Every day she got better and more professional. Ellie was happy for her. She advised her of the need to start marketing her skill. She did. She used the money she had been saving in order to go to school to run ads, and soon she could boast of hundreds of thousands monthly cash flow. This time, she could save a bigger amount monthly towards her schooling, and within 6 months, she gained admission into the university. Truly, when there is a will, there will always be a way.